When my husband of 7 years suddenly demanded we split every household bill, I was shocked. We'd always shared everything: love, life, and finances. But this time, something felt off. For 7 years, I thought I was living a dream. We weren't perfect, but we were us, steady, reliable, and deeply connected. The kind of couple who finished each other's sentences, who texted during lunch breaks just to say, "miss you." I used to wake up before him and just watch him sleep for a few seconds. The peaceful rise and fall of his chest, that faint smile he always had, even in his dreams. It made me feel safe, loved, chosen. We met in the most ordinary way, at a mutual friend's housewarming party. I was standing by the snack table, awkwardly trying to peel the label off a beer bottle, and he just walked up grinning and said, "You know, that label's not going to tell you your future." I laughed, mostly out of surprise. But he kept talking, and within minutes, it felt like I'd known him for years. From that night on, everything moved fast. Dinners, weekends together, moving in, and eventually, marriage. It all felt easy, like breathing. Over time, we built a home together, not a mansion, but cozy, filled with soft lights and laughter. The kind of place where you could smell Sunday pancakes before you even opened your eyes. We didn't count who paid what. We just shared everything. If I bought groceries, he handled the utilities. If he booked a vacation, I picked up the travel insurance. There was no scoreboard. He always said, "What's mine is yours." And I believed him, wholeheartedly. I thought that was what marriage was. Trust. You don't measure love in dollars or divide it into halves. You just build, together. Then came that night. The night everything started to shift, even if I didn't realize it at first. It was a Thursday evening, ordinary. We'd both just gotten home from work. I'd cooked dinner, creamy pasta with mushrooms, his favorite. The smell filled the kitchen. The soft hum of jazz played in the background. He poured us each a glass of red wine, the same kind we'd shared since our honeymoon in Italy. He looked tired. More than usual, his tie was loose, his eyes distant. "Long day?" I asked, smiling, trying to lighten the mood. He nodded slowly, taking a sip of wine. Then, after a moment of silence, he said it, calmly, almost casually. "I think we should start splitting everything. Bills, groceries, even date nights." At first, I didn't process it. I just blinked, waiting for the punchline. "Split everything?" I repeated. "What do you mean?" He set his glass down, staring at the table rather than at me. "I've been thinking," he said. "It's only fair. You have your income, I have mine. We should share things equally now, you know? 50-50. His tone wasn't angry, not even defensive, just cold, measured, like he'd rehearsed it. I felt a strange tightness in my chest, not from anger, but confusion. We had never talked like this before. For 7 years, our finances, our home, our lives, it was ours, not his and mine. So I laughed softly, thinking maybe he was joking. "Okay, sure," I said, "as long as I get the couch and the divorce." But he didn't laugh, not even a smirk. That's when the silence hit me, the kind that stretches across the room and fills every corner with unease. I put my fork down. "What's going on?" I asked quietly. He shrugged. "Nothing's going on. I just think it's time we handle things more practically. It's what responsible couples do." Responsible couples. That phrase stung more than it should have, because I thought we were responsible. We'd saved, we'd planned, we'd supported each other. This wasn't about being practical. This was about something deeper, something he wasn't saying. As I looked at him, I noticed how different he seemed. The man sitting across from me wasn't the one who once danced with me barefoot in the kitchen, or who left sticky notes on the fridge saying, "Love you, sleepyhead." His eyes, once full of warmth, were colder now, detached, like he was already halfway out the door in his mind. I tried to reason with him. "I don't understand. Have I done something? Did something change?" He sighed. "It's not about you. I just think it's healthier this way. More balanced." That word, balanced, echoed in my head. Balanced? Wasn't love supposed to be unbalanced sometimes? Didn't we promise to carry each other when one of us was tired? What happened to for better or worse? He reached for another bite of pasta as if we were talking about the weather. Meanwhile, my appetite was gone. The clinking of his fork against the plate felt painfully loud. I excused myself, walked to the kitchen sink, and just stared out the window. The sky outside was turning violet. Our reflection glimmered faintly in the glass. Two people who once promised forever, now separated by invisible walls. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Just the faint hum of the refrigerator and the slow ticking of the wall clock. Finally, I turned around and said softly, "Okay, if that's what you want." He looked relieved. Almost too relieved, as if I'd just made things easier for him. That's when my stomach twisted, because I realized something. This wasn't a random idea. This was preparation. Preparation for something else. Something I wasn't yet ready to face. He smiled faintly, reached for his wine, and said, "Good, I knew you'd understand." Understand? I didn't understand anything, but I nodded anyway because what else could I do? After dinner, I cleared the table in silence. He went to his study to finish some emails. I stood there in the kitchen, washing dishes I hadn't even eaten from, feeling the water run over my hands like time slipping away. The house felt quieter than usual. Empty, even though he was still there. I walked past his study, peeking through the half-open door. He was on his laptop, smiling at something on the screen, that soft, familiar smile I hadn't seen all evening. But it wasn't for me. I didn't say anything. I just walked to our bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the photo on the nightstand. The two of us on our wedding day, grinning like fools, his hand around my waist, mine on his chest, two people who believed they'd never drift apart. I touched the frame gently and whispered, "What happened to us?" The only answer was the faint laughter from his study, muffled by the door. That night, I lay awake long after he came to bed. He turned his back to me, and for the first time in 7 years, I didn't reach out to touch him. Because deep down, I knew the man I loved was slipping away, and I had no idea why. After that dinner, things between us began to shift, slowly at first, like a small crack forming in glass. You don't notice it right away, but once you do, you can't stop seeing it. The next morning, he left early for work. No kiss, no goodbye, not even his usual drive safe. It was small, but it stung. I tried not to overthink it. Maybe he was just tired. We'd both had long weeks. Before. But then one morning turned into many. One cold silence after another. He stopped leaving little notes on the fridge. Stopped calling on his lunch breaks. Stopped sitting beside me on the couch at night. And that warmth, the quiet, unspoken connection we once had, began to fade, replaced by a chill that lingered in every room. I started noticing small things. Things you only see when your heart already suspects something's wrong. His phone, for instance, he used to leave it anywhere, on the table, the bed, the counter. Now, it was always with him. He'd take it into the bathroom when he showered, sleep with it under his pillow. Once, I saw the screen light up, and before I could even glance at it, he flipped it face down. It wasn't just about privacy. It was defensiveness. And that's when you know something's changed, when you have to protect your peace from the person you love. Then came the late nights. At first, it was once or twice a week. He'd text, "Working late. Don't wait up." But soon it became almost every night. I'd stay up anyway, just listening for the sound of the front door, the jingle of his keys. Sometimes he'd come home past midnight. No explanation, no apology. Just a distant, tired man who avoided my eyes as he walked straight to the shower. The first few times I asked where he'd been. He'd sigh, shake his head and say, "Please not tonight. I'm exhausted." So I stopped asking, because I knew the real answer would hurt more than the silence. On weekends, he used to make breakfast. It was our ritual. pancakes on Sundays, his hands dusted with flour, music playing in the background. He'd hum along, kiss me on the forehead, and ask if I wanted extra syrup. Now, weekends were different. He'd wake up early, say he was running errands, and disappear for hours. No explanation, no texts, just absence. One Sunday, I tried to surprise him at his office. I thought maybe a coffee and a smile might remind him of us. But when I arrived, the building was dark. His car wasn't even there. That's when my stomach dropped. I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel, trying to fight the thoughts flooding my head. Was he seeing someone? Was he planning to leave? Or worse, had he already left, emotionally, and I just hadn't caught up yet? Nights became unbearable. He'd fall asleep facing the wall. I'd stare at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every laugh, every kiss, searching for the exact moment we started to drift apart. It's strange how quiet a house can feel when love begins to die. Even the ticking clock felt louder, heavier, as if it was counting down to something inevitable. I remember one night vividly. I reached out, gently placed my hand on his shoulder, and whispered, "Are you happy?" He turned slightly, eyes still half closed, and muttered, "Can we not do this right now?" And just like that, another piece of me fell away. I started to blame myself. Maybe I'd gotten too comfortable. Maybe I wasn't exciting anymore. Or maybe I'd stopped making him feel needed. Tried to fix things the only way I knew how, through love. I planned dinners. I dressed up for him. I even cooked his favorite meal again, creamy mushroom pasta, the same one from that night. When he came home, I smiled, trying to sound cheerful. "Dinner's ready," I said softly. He looked at the table, candles lit, food steaming, and sighed. "I told you, I already ate." Then he walked past me, straight to the shower. No kiss. No thank you, nothing. That night, I cried quietly in the kitchen, not because he didn't eat, but because I realized I was still fighting for something he'd already stopped caring about. The next morning, I saw something that froze me. While folding laundry, I noticed a faint perfume scent on one of his shirts, not mine. It was floral, expensive, delicate. I lifted it to my nose again just to be sure. It wasn't a one-time thing. It lingered, like a ghost that refused to leave. And that's when I knew. Whatever he was keeping from me. It wasn't small. It was life-changing, but I wasn't ready to face it yet, so I pretended. I smiled when he walked in. I made small talk. I acted like nothing had changed, because sometimes pretending is the only way to delay the pain. But deep inside, I could feel the truth inching closer. Something was coming, something I wasn't prepared for. And deep down, I think he knew I was starting to see through him. Because that night, for the first time, he slept in the guest room. No argument, no explanation. Just silence, the kind that tells you everything you were too afraid to ask. The distance between us had grown into something I could almost feel. It hung in the air, invisible, but heavy, like humidity before a storm. Every conversation was shorter, every silence longer. He still came home every night, but it didn't feel like he lived there anymore. It was like sharing a house with a polite stranger. One who knew your routines, your favorite coffee mug, your bedtime, but not your heart. I kept trying to bridge the gap. I really did. But love can't survive when it's only fed from one side. One Saturday morning, I woke up early. I thought maybe we could spend the day together, run errands, grab lunch, maybe talk. When I walked into the kitchen, he was already dressed. Car keys in hand. He didn't even notice me at first. "Heading out?" I asked softly. He looked startled, like I'd interrupted something. "Yeah," he said quickly. "Just a few things to take care of." "Want me to come with?" I asked. It was a simple question, but it hung there for a few seconds too long. He sighed. "You buy your stuff. I'll buy mine." And that was it. No anger, no explanation. Just a wall of words that told me more than I wanted to know. Something inside me cracked that moment, quietly, but completely. I sat at the kitchen table long after he left. The house was so still, it felt hollow. The same walls that once echoed with laughter now felt like they were listening, waiting for me to admit it. He was gone, even if he hadn't left yet. I tried to distract myself, cleaning the counter, folding laundry, watering the plants he'd once bought for me, but everything reminded me of us, of who we used to be. That evening, when he came home, I noticed something different. A faint scent, not the usual cologne I'd gifted him years ago, but something floral, softer, feminine. I asked where he'd been. He avoided my eyes and said, "Just work stuff." "On a Saturday?" I asked, forcing a small laugh. He didn't answer. He just walked past me, dropped his jacket on the couch, and went straight to shower. And as I stood there in the hallway, staring at the closed bathroom door, something in me finally snapped. I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep waiting for an explanation that was never coming. So that night, when he fell asleep, I sat beside him, watching his face in the dim light. I wanted to remember him like that, peaceful, familiar, almost innocent looking. But I also needed answers. So, with trembling hands, I reached for his phone. It was face down on the nightstand. For a moment, I hesitated. I didn't want to be that person, the one who snoops, who doesn't trust. But love without honesty is just self-destruction in disguise. I unlocked it. And what I found shattered me. There were messages, dozens of them, from a woman I didn't know. Her name glowed on the screen like a scar. They talked about plans, dinners, hotel rooms, and something that made my stomach turn. "Once everything's split, it'll be easier for you to move in." I froze, every word blurred. My hands shook. 7 years. 7 years of love, loyalty, and trust, all quietly replaced by someone else. I placed the phone back exactly where it was and lay down beside him, staring at the ceiling. The man next to me slept peacefully, while I lay there realizing my marriage had ended long before I knew it. That night, I didn't cry, not because it didn't hurt, but because I was completely empty. Tomorrow, I decided, would be the day I stopped wondering why, and started finding out who I was without him. The next morning, sunlight filled the room, warm and golden, but to me, it felt cold. He was already gone, like always. The side of the bed he slept on still carried his shape, but the space between us felt miles wide. I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone still resting on his nightstand. I'd seen enough last night to know the truth, but part of me needed to hear it, to see it in his eyes. I wasn't angry yet. I was just numb as 7 years of shared memories, birthdays, plans, and promises, and all of it now felt like a carefully written script that had just reached its tragic ending. That day, I couldn't focus on anything. Every sound, the hum of the fridge, the ticking clock, felt too loud. My hands shook as I made coffee. My mind played back every message, every split the bills conversation, every excuse he'd made. And then, the last message from that woman echoed in my head. "Can't wait until you move in." Move in. He wasn't planning for a future with me anymore. He was planning his exit. When he came home that evening, I didn't speak right away. He walked into the kitchen, loosened his tie, and gave me a faint nod, the kind you give to a coworker, not a wife. The smell of his cologne hit me first. It was different. Not the one I'd given him for his birthday. "Long day?" I asked, my voice calm. Too calm. He nodded, opening the fridge like nothing was wrong. That's when I said it. "I know." He froze. His hand lingered on the fridge door before slowly closing it. Then he turned around, his eyes flickering with something between guilt and fear. "Know what?" he asked. I held his phone out to him. I'd taken it from the nightstand that morning. "You know what?" I said quietly. There was a long pause. No yelling. No excuses. Just silence that spoke louder than any confession ever could. Finally, he sighed. I didn't want to hurt you, he said softly. I thought if we started separating things, it would make it easier when I left. When I left. Those words sliced through me. So this was your way of easing the guilt? I asked, turning our marriage into a spreadsheet before walking away. He didn't answer. He just stood there, defeated but not sorry. And that's when I realized, this wasn't the man I married. That man would have fought for me. This one had already given up. I set his phone on the counter and said the only words I could manage. You don't need to leave later. You can leave now. He packed that night. No shouting, no tears, just quiet footsteps and the sound of a zipper closing. When the door finally shut behind him, the silence that followed felt like freedom wrapped in heartbreak. For the first time in months, I could finally breathe. And even though my heart was breaking, I knew. This was the moment I got myself back. The sound of the front door closing that night felt final, like the end of a movie I never wanted to watch. No goodbyes, no dramatic speech. Just silence. And the faint echo of a love that used to fill every inch of that house. For a few minutes, I just stood there. Still. Frozen. Listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the whisper of the wind outside the window. It was strange how normal everything looked. His coffee mug on the counter, his slippers by the door, the faint dent in the couch cushion where he used to sit. But he was gone, and somehow, the house already felt emptier. I didn't cry that night. Not because I didn't want to, but because my body didn't know how. It was like my heart had gone into survival mode, numbness disguised as strength. I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the table, the same one where he once told me he wanted to split the bills. Back then, I thought it was the beginning of a conversation. Now, I realized it was the start of an ending he'd already written. His words replayed in my mind. I didn't want to hurt you. I thought it would make things easier when I left. Easier for who? Because it hadn't been easy for me. It had been slow, painful erosion, watching someone you love slip away piece by piece, while you kept pretending nothing was wrong. Over the next few days, the routine stayed the same, but the meaning changed. I still made coffee in the morning, but only 1 cup. I still made dinner, but half the portions. And every empty space whispered his absence. Friends called. They asked what happened, and I said the same thing every time. We just grew apart. It wasn't the full truth, but it was easier than explaining betrayal. Then one evening, I opened the windows and let the cold air rush in. It carried the scent of rain. Clean, sharp, honest. And for the first time, I felt a strange kind of peace. I walked into the bedroom, took down the wedding photo, and placed it gently in a box. Not out of anger, out of acceptance. Because sometimes love doesn't end with screaming. Sometimes it ends quietly, in the middle of an ordinary night, when you finally decide to stop begging for someone to stay. A week later, he texted me, just 1 line. I hope you're okay. I looked at the message for a long time, and then, for the first time in months, I smiled. Because I was okay. Not healed, not whole, but okay. And that was enough. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned off my phone, wrapped myself in a blanket, and whispered to the empty room, I'll be fine. And I was. Because losing him wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of finding me. Looking back now, splitting the bills was the best thing he ever did for me. It helped me see his true worth. Sometimes, losing someone means gaining yourself again. Tell me in the comments, would you forgive someone who planned their exit like this? And if stories like this hit your heart, subscribe for more true emotional stories every week. Your story might help someone find their strength too.